moment she said it, the world seemed to pause around him, like even the sunlight pouring through the cafe windows didn't know how to move forward. "I want a baby, can you help?" Her voice didn't tremble, but her eyes did, and in that instant, everything Malik Arshad thought he understood about life, pain, and responsibility began to unravel in the quiet hum of an ordinary afternoon. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life brings people together, take a moment right now to comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Malik hadn't always been the kind of man strangers turn to for something so deeply personal. Once, he had been just another young dreamer, chasing stability, building a small but steady life. But that was before everything changed on a rainy morning 5 years ago, when a single phone call shattered his world and left him holding his 2-year-old daughter, Meher, while trying to understand how grief could feel so loud and yet so empty at the same time. Since then, Malik's life had been a careful balance of survival and silent strength. Days began early, with soft morning light spilling into their modest apartment, where Meher would wake up clutching her stuffed rabbit and calling for him in a voice that still carried innocence untouched by loss. He learned how to braid her hair, how to cook meals that were simple but warm, and how to read bedtime stories even on nights when exhaustion threatened to pull him under. Every small act became a promise, to her and to himself, that he would not let their broken story define the love they could still build. The cafe where he worked part-time during the day wasn't anything special to outsiders, but to Malik, it was a place where life felt steady. The scent of coffee, the quiet conversations, the rhythm of cups and spoons, it gave him a sense of control. And it was there, under the soft glow of daylight filtering through a glass, that she had walked in for the first time. Her name was Zoya Rahim, and she carried herself with a quiet elegance that didn't try too hard. There was something about her presence, composed, yet heavy, like someone who had learned to carry invisible weight without letting it show. She became a regular, always choosing the same table near the window, always ordering the same tea, and always leaving behind a silence that lingered long after she was gone. Malik noticed her not because she was striking, but because she seemed distant from everything around her, as if she existed slightly outside the world everyone else occupied. Weeks passed before their interactions moved beyond polite exchanges, but there was something unspoken that connected them, a mutual understanding of what it meant to keep going, even when something inside you had already given up. It was a bright afternoon when everything shifted. The kind of day where the sky felt too blue, almost mocking the struggles hidden beneath it. Meher had insisted on visiting the cafe after school, her laughter filling the space in a way that softened even the most hardened expressions. Zoya had been there, watching quietly as Malik helped his daughter with her homework, her gaze lingering just a little longer than usual. That was when she approached him, her steps measured but determined, and sat across from him without hesitation. Malik sensed something was different before she even spoke. There was urgency in her stillness, a tension in the way she held her hands together. And then she said it. "I want a baby, can you help?" The words didn't make sense at first. Malik blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly, his mind scrambling to catch up with what his ears had just processed. But her expression didn't change, and slowly, the weight of her request settled into reality. He should have walked away. That would have been the simplest response, the safest choice. But something in her eyes stopped him, a quiet desperation that mirrored a part of himself he rarely acknowledged. It wasn't impulsiveness that made him stay, but curiosity, and perhaps something deeper. Over the next few days, Zoya shared her story, not all at once, but in fragments that painted a picture of a life shaped by expectations and silent heartbreak. She had spent years trying to build a family within a marriage that had slowly dissolved into absence. When it finally ended, it left behind a void that success, independence, and time couldn't fill. She didn't want love in the traditional sense anymore. She wanted purpose, something tangible to hold on to, something that would anchor her in a world that felt increasingly hollow. Malik listened more than he spoke, his thoughts constantly returning to Meher, to the fragile yet powerful bond they shared. He knew what it meant to raise a child alone, to carry both roles, to feel both the joy and the overwhelming fear of being someone's entire world. And the idea of willingly stepping into that responsibility again, especially under such unusual circumstances, felt impossible. But life had taught him that impossibility often hid behind fear. Days turned into weeks as he wrestled with the decision. He watched Zoya from a distance, noticing the small details others might overlook. The way she lingered near families with children, the way her eyes softened when Meher laughed, the way she masked her longing with quiet composure. And slowly, something shifted within him, not out of obligation, but out of empathy. He realized that this wasn't just about her wanting a child. It was about giving life another chance to mean something. The agreement they reached wasn't simple, and it wasn't without uncertainty. It required trust, patience, and a willingness to embrace a future neither of them could fully predict. But somehow, it felt right. Not in a way that made sense logically, but in a way that resonated deeply, as if their broken paths had led them to this moment for a reason. As time passed, their lives began to intertwine in unexpected ways. Zoya became a part of their daily routine, not as a stranger, but as someone who gradually found a place within the small world Malik had built for himself and Meher. There were moments of awkwardness, of doubt, of questions that had no immediate answers. But there were also moments of quiet joy, shared meals, laughter that came easy with time, and a growing sense of connection that neither of them had anticipated. For Meher, Zoya was simply someone who listened to her stories, who helped with her drawings, who brought a warmth that felt natural rather than forced. And for Malik, watching his daughter open up to someone new stirred something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, a fragile hope. But hope is never without its challenges. The reality of their situation began to weigh on them as whispers from the outside world grew louder. People questioned, judged, and misunderstood what they had chosen to do. Malik faced doubts from those who believed he was risking too much, while Zoya struggled with the fear of being seen as selfish or unconventional. There were nights when Malik lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was making a mistake that could affect not just his life, but Meher's future. And there were days when Zoya questioned whether she had the strength to follow through, whether she deserved the chance she was asking for. Yet, through it all, they continued. Because sometimes, the most meaningful choices are the ones that come with the greatest uncertainty. The turning point came not in a dramatic moment, but in a quiet realization. It was a warm afternoon, much like the day everything had begun, when Malik found himself watching Zoya and Meher sitting together, their laughter blending with the soft sound of the city outside. There was no tension in that moment, no doubt, just a simple, undeniable truth. They weren't just creating a life. They were building a family. And for the first time since that rainy morning 5 years ago, Malik felt something he had almost forgotten how to recognize. Peace. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments that tested their resolve. But they had already come too far to turn back, and somewhere along the way, what had started as an unexpected request had transformed into something far more profound. It became a story of healing, of courage, and of the extraordinary ways in which people can find each other when they need it most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in second chances and the beauty of unexpected connections. Your engagement helps keep these meaningful stories alive. And before this story comes to an end, here's a special request. Comment below where you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Your voice matters more than you think. Because sometimes, life doesn't follow the path we expect. Sometimes, it takes us somewhere unfamiliar, somewhere uncertain. But in those moments, if we choose to hold on to kindness, to trust in the possibility of something better, we might just find that even the most unexpected beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings.